So welcome to the Inform Accessible Travel webinar. We're really excited to have Karla and Stephen from Adventure Wheels with us today. And I'll give you a little bit of housekeeping before we start and some introductions. So the project, the webinar is funded by the National Lottery. It is for young people with muscle weakening conditions, but everyone is welcome. Don't worry about that. You're all welcome to come along and hear about Karla and Stephen's adventures. We're very excited, aren't we, Jackie? What I would appreciate though is I'm going to drop a link into the chat, and I'd really appreciate it if you would all become members. I've noticed that a lot of you are not members of Pathfinders. It is open to everybody, but if you have a muscle weakening condition and you live in the UK, you can become a voting member. But I will drop that into the chat, and that will mean that we can get in touch with you and let you know about other events that are happening, or research, or all sorts of things, but we can let you know about that. You can unsubscribe at any time, but you can also let us know about your communication preferences as well. So there's lots of benefits for being a member of Pathfinders. I'll drop that in a minute. For the webinar, there are ways that you can interact. I realise that there's just us on the screen, but you'll be able to ask questions via the Q&A button, or drop us a message in the chat. I think I've got that working this time. But also, if you want to speak, let us know via the chat function, and we can bring you in if you can speak and tell us your question. There'll be time for questions at the end of the presentation, and we're going to try and get through as many people's questions as we can. There's quite a lot of people on at this event, so it might be difficult for us to get through all of them. So we'll try and do as many as we can. And Stephen and Karla have said that they will answer any questions. You can email them at the end, and we'll get back to you with any answers we don't manage to get answered today. I'm not going to talk for much longer. I'm just going to introduce everybody. So I'm Kath. I am the UpLift lead for the Youth Development Project for Pathfinders. We've also got Jackie, who also works with me in the UpLift team. And we have Stephen and Karla from Adventure Wheels. And I'm going to talk no more. I'm just going to let you get on with the presentation, Stephen and Karla.
Okay. Let's see if we can get this presentation up. Thank you so much for joining us on this accessible travel webinar. Thank you so much to Pathfinders as well for inviting us to do this for you. I hope you find it really interesting and insightful, and it's definitely worth giving Pathfinders a follow on social media, or just checking out their website to see some of the work they do, because they're doing some really good stuff in this space. We are really enjoying the Inform series so far. We loved Dr. Suzanne's talk a couple of weeks ago, which was all about assistive tech for adapting your house and having opening doors and that sort of thing. We now want to have everything like that in our house. So hopefully one day. And on the subject of the house, we're very much looking forward to the adaptive, accessible housing webinar, which is coming up in a few weeks. If you have missed any of them, I do believe that they're all going to be put on the Pathfinders YouTube account, so you can always catch up with that at some point. Oh yeah, just before we begin, I should probably point out, some of you will know this already, some of you won't. Karla has a vocal cord paralysis. That isn't, well, I'm led to believe that isn't something that normally happens with her type of disability, but it does mean that she can't speak above a whisper. So unfortunately for you all, that means you're going to have to listen to the sound of my voice. But hopefully it's interesting. Okay, so the order of service coming up over the next half an hour, 40 minutes. I don't know if we should call it order of service. Anyway, we're going to start off by telling you a little bit more about us, some of the adaptions we've had to our own caravan, and then we're going to go into our own accessible adventures, share with you some of the highlights from our most recent trip. We've only been back a few weeks, actually, haven't we? And then we're going to go into caravan and motorhome adaptions in general, and hopefully that will just give you a really good picture of what is available and what's out there. We're also going to tell you all about the alternatives to caravan and motorhoming, just in case it's not a route that you want to go down and maybe you still want to go out there and explore the world. Hopefully we'll have some things in there that you might not have thought about. And then our favourite travel accessories, and also some resources for where you can go to find out more information, because We can maybe inspire your adventures, but we are not the best when it comes to the sort of the technical side of it. So there's some really good things that there's some really good resources we can point you in the direction of. Right, okay, let's see if we can change the slide. Okay, now this is a picture of us on the left that very, very rarely sees the light of day. Karla and I met when we were 14 years old at school. No screenshots of that, please. And we've been together ever since. I think we've actually spent longer in our lives together than we have apart. And I must say, Karla, you're doing incredibly well to put up with me. Anyway, we obviously went to school, we moved out, we now live together, and we've always had a passion for exploring and travel. So in our early days before we lived together, we used to catch the bus into Bournemouth and stay in a hotel and have a little holiday, just the two of us. And then after we moved out, we got a car, which you can see there. What is it? It's a Peugeot Partner with the lowered floor wheelchair access adaptation to it. And when we first got a car, because there was maybe a year or so of us being moved out but without a car, it was just the freedom that that gave us was so immense. So we used to do everything in the car. So we drive everywhere, we do drive-throughs, we go on car dates, and that was what sort of inspired our first ever trip. It's a terrible picture just below the picture of our car there, but that was our first road trip to the incredibly exotic location of Manchester. It was the longest, the furthest distance I had ever drove, and because of that theme of us doing everything in the car and with the car, because it was so exciting for us to have a car, we went to what at the time was described as Europe's only permanent drive-in cinema. I did have a look on Google Maps yesterday, and I don't think it's there anymore, unfortunately. But that was our first road trip. We stayed, actually this was the very last time I was ever allowed to book a hotel for us. We stayed in, it was £21 a night, and we stayed in a motorway service station. I think it was a travel lodge, and it wasn't the best experience of my life. I think the hotel could have done with a renovation or a complete rebuild. Karla actually read some of the reviews whilst we were there. I said, you know, it's not a good idea to read these reviews until we get home. But one of the reviews described their room that they were staying in as seeing every single human transaction from birth to death. And I had a very strong feeling that that might have been the room that we were staying in. And hence why that was the last time I was allowed to book a hotel. But hey, it was £21 a night, and we were young. You're probably wondering why there's an IKEA logo on the screen. We will get to that. But next up, we will tell you about this was probably our last adventure before we brought our caravan. And that was a road trip to the Netherlands. We stayed in an Airbnb, and we had three things on the agenda. We wanted to see Amsterdam, we wanted to see a windmill, which hopefully you can see from that top picture, and we wanted to see some tulips. And we ticked all those boxes, and we went to Kokenhof, which is the sort of the go-to tulip gardens in the Netherlands, as you can see from the picture down below, and it was absolutely incredible. So that was our second big adventure together. But we stayed in an Airbnb, and actually Karla booked this one because it might not surprise you to know that I wasn't allowed to book anything else. And of course, everyone has a different definition of accessible. This was completely accessible, apart from we had to go up 2 steps to get in the room. So as you can maybe tell, our experience of accessible travel wasn't going particularly well so far. Although we did have one incredibly good stay at the Hilton Trafalgar in central London, and that was brilliant. That was perfect in every single way, actually. And they brought breakfast to you in the morning, so you didn't even have to go downstairs. Anyway, let's get to the IKEA logo. again, this is probably from that concept of us doing everything in the car. We would quite often drive across to IKEA at Southampton and just have dinner on a funny little date one evening. We had our very first discussion in the IKEA restaurant at Southampton that wouldn't it be amazing if we brought a caravan and had it adapted? And a couple of years later, that's exactly what we did. So moving on, and we're going to tell you about our caravan and our car. Our tow colour is a Volkswagen Transporter. It's pretty much all I know about it because I'm not a very car person. We will get on to towing with a wheelchair accessible vehicle a little bit later on. And our caravan is a Bailey Unicorn Valencia from 2011. We chose that specific one because the specification sort of met our requirements, and it was the most economical to adapt because if you can see from that picture, there is sort of various lockers and hatches and external ports all along the sidewall of the caravan. So fortunately with that model, there was room to widen the door without having to move a window or anything like that. So it was fairly economical to adapt. I did a lot of it myself because I have a toolbox, so I just thought, you know, let's give it a go and see how much money we can save. And then it got taken to a workshop who put the wider door on, and they also did some rewiring because all the wires seemed to be routed in the wrong place for what we want, where we wanted them. And this is it. This is our caravan. So you can see Karla inside there, and that will hopefully show you the space. We've made an L-shaped lounge at the front. Originally, our caravan was what they call in the industry a parallel lounge. So we made it into an L-shape. So Karla has enough room to go in and turn around. We have, I can't remember how long that ramp is, but it is a ramp. Karla can get up it on her own without any assistance, which is good, although they can put wheelchair winches inside caravans if that's something that you want. And because we were trying to save money, we haven't done too much more to it than that. So towards the rear of our caravan, you see we've got the kitchen on the left there, and it's called, I think it's called a fixed French bed. And then we have a washroom area along the back. That washroom picture was taken with my wide angle lens, so it does make it look slightly bigger than it actually is. But I think a lot of people who are watching this with who have a disability will sort of understand that, sometimes, something doesn't have to be quite right, but you sort of make the best of it. And that's what we've done. And maybe one day in the future we will have something a little bit more substantially adapted, and those adaptions we might show you a little bit later on. Okay, so moving on, one of the other accessories we added to our caravan was a solar panel, and we combined this with a lithium battery, which I think I don't know, they're supposed to be quite good. It has an app, so I can tell how much power is left. And that enabled us to do many things. It enabled us to not have to worry about if there was a power cut on a campsite. It enabled us the freedom to go to campsites where it didn't necessarily have to be, we didn't necessarily have to have electricity to run Karla's respiratory equipment. So that was just one of the best adaptions we made. And as you can see from the mess there on the picture on the left, I didn't do it myself. But I think I'd done worse to our caravan over the years, so that wasn't too bad. And as I say, it enabled us to go to this location here. A couple of years ago, maybe 2018, 2019, we did a trip to the remote islands of the Outer Hebrides in Scotland. They're a cluster of islands off the west coast of Scotland, and we had the best time ever. That picture there and that campsite of us parked up on the beach looking out to the sea was sort of the reason why we put the solar panel in the first place, because that campsite was completely off-grid. It cost us £10 a night, and we would have stayed there forever if we could. The sand on that particular beach was just firm enough that we could actually get Karla's chair on the sand, which is not something that you can do on every single beach. So for us, that was a real luxury, and just being able to walk along the sand together and see the sunset was one of the best camping memories we've ever had. And if anyone asks us, where would you go back to if we could, it's 100% there, that campsite. I think it was called Neep campsite on the west coast of the Isle of Lewis. So having our solar panel was well worth it just for that. Okay, so we've touched on accessible adventures just then, but we are going to tell you some of our highlights from our most recent trip to continental Europe, which was a brilliant trip. If you do follow us on Adventure Wheels already, you'll know that our favorite hashtag to use is hashtag accessible adventures. And we had a brilliant time. We were actually debating what trip to tell you about this evening, and we nearly chose some of the highlights from our trip to the Pyrenees last year, but we realized, and this is terribly organized for us, normally we're useless, but we have actually made a YouTube video all about our top 5 accessible things to do in the Pyrenees. So we won't talk about the Pyrenees tonight unless you have any specific questions about it, but yeah, there is that video on the Adventure Wheels YouTube account, which is on the internet, and you can watch it if you want to. But tonight we will tell you all about our trip across France, across Germany, and up into Belgium briefly as well. And we started off in England, of course. We crossed over using the Eurotunnel, which we'll touch on in a minute. And we visited 3 regions. We started off in the French region of Jura, which is nowhere anyone's ever heard of, but you need to hear about it because it's just incredible. I don't think I can move my mouse for you to see it, but if you're able to see that map, it's the region, it's the area that is sort of just above Geneva, between Dijon and Geneva. It's that sort of area there. And we'll show you some of our highlights in a minute. After Jura, we went to the Alps, the French Alps, which was phenomenal, and that is just below the Jura region, where you might be able to see Grenoble and Chamonix. And then after that, we went all the way up to Germany, and we had an incredible time exploring the Black Forest. And then very briefly into Belgium, and we're really looking forward to telling you about what we found in Belgium a little bit later on. So our first highlight, oh no, not our first highlight, how we got there, which was using the Eurotunnel. And it's quickly becoming our favourite way to cross the channel for 2 reasons. One of us gets a little bit seasick. We found that out. It is me, unfortunately. And the second reason is the Eurotunnel is it's such an accessible way. It's not even the fact that you can be there so quickly versus a ferry. It's just the fact that you know, if you have a disability, you literally don't have to leave your car. If you're a wheelchair driver or a wheelchair passenger, you don't have to get out to do anything. You have the terminals at both sides that you can stop off at. But on a lot of the occasions we've done it, again, as you might know by now, we are 2 of the least organised people in the world. We didn't have time to stop off, so we went straight through the tunnel, and it's brilliant. One of the things I will just say though is definitely let them know that you are a wheelchair user or you have some sort of disability. That will enable them to put you in the best spots on the train. So just in case anything goes wrong, then they know where you are, sort of thing. So that is that. Definite thumbs up for the Eurotunnel. Have I missed anything? No, I think that's that. So in Jura, our first location we visited was called Cascade de Tous. I'm not very good at pronouncing anything, but I think that was close enough. And it was just this such enchanting waterfall we found, cascading over the rocks, and there was something so magical about it, and it was almost like it had been plucked directly from a fairy tale. It was accessible to get there. Karla got there with her wheelchair. It did get a little bit steep and a little bit bumpy as we were closing in on the waterfall, but it was well worth going there. And we had a nice walk through the valley. I think there might be some sheep, French-speaking sheep. Yeah, it was definitely something that we would go back to if we could. And if you're ever in that area, then we recommend you give it a visit if you want to. Next up, and this really did blow our socks off, was Grotte de Moidons. And it was, from our perspective, it was completely accessible to Karla. Karla was lucky enough to have a really good power chair. It's a Boulder Finesse, and it coped with everything perfectly fine. It's very rare, from our experience, to actually find a cave that is completely accessible. Whilst this one, some of it was a little bit steep, so it might not necessarily be accessible to you, it was completely level access, so there was no steps, and very much unlike anything we've found before. We could see every single part of it, which was brilliant and very unique, I think. I would definitely invite you in the comments or in the chat. I can't see the chat, but hopefully someone will tell me afterwards. If you have found a cave, maybe in England or anywhere else in the world that is accessible, please do let us know, because there's something so incredible about actually visiting a cave and seeing the rock formations underground. So yeah, if you have any tips for everyone, please put them in the chat. Okay, so next up was Chamonix, which I eventually managed to pronounce correctly after being there for a little while. And Chamonix is a lovely little alpine village at the foot of Mont Blanc. Though, as you can see from the pictures, when we arrived, the weather descended upon us, and we didn't get much of a view of Mont Blanc at all. In fact, I ended up referring to it as Mont Blanc, because it was completely blank. There was nothing there. But nevertheless, Chamonix was a wonderful town to wander around. And if you go there, hopefully you will have much better weather than us. But also there is, we do believe there is is it a funicular railway? Is it what? Oh, it's a cable car that is supposed to be accessible. We didn't do it because we were very short on time when we arrived, but yes, and the weather. But if you are in that area and you're looking for an accessible thing to do, then maybe have a look at that. As I say, we can't vouch for its accessibility, but it is there if it's something that you want to do. Okay, next up, we arrived in the Black Forest of Germany. If there are any German people or German speakers in the webinar tonight, I'm not going to offend you by trying to pronounce that. But we found ourselves in the northern half of the Black Forest region, and there was this amazing spiral lookout tower. And I don't think we've ever found a treetop trail which is as accessible as this. So you started off walking through the forest along a completely smooth boardwalk. There is little activity things to stop off at and see information. We did see one of these famous Black Forest squirrels whilst we were there, which is a bit like a grey squirrel or a red squirrel, but black. And there was also some good stuff for kids to play on as well as you were going there. And then when you actually get to the tower itself, as you might be able to see from that picture on the right, it is quite a long way up, but it's completely level. it's 40 meters up, and you just walk round and walk round and walk round and try not to get dizzy. And eventually you get up to the top, and the views out, as you can see from that picture of Karla on the bottom left, were just amazing. And it was a nice way to sort of put the Black Forest in perspective, just the vast area that was surrounding us. It was brilliant. A massive thumbs up for accessibility there. And there was also, for the children amongst you, there was a slide as well. If you didn't fancy walking all the way down, you could pay, is it €2, and get the slide down. It was incredibly fast. They estimated it as 25 to 30 miles an hour. I think you should probably wear a helmet, but they didn't have them. And then you get down in no time, but that was great fun. Excuse me. Okay, sorry, losing my voice. Right, so next up, we drove along the Black Forest High Route. Excuse me. And whenever we are anywhere in the world, we always try and find a driving tour. They are such an accessible way to see the area. Excuse me a minute. I do apologize, I'm losing my voice. Good, okay. So the Black Forest High Route, I think it was about 37 miles long, and it took you through some of the most beautiful parts of the Black Forest region. We stopped off at many places along the way. As you can see from the picture in the bottom right there, Lover Flood, I think it was called. It was destroyed in, the area there was destroyed in 1999 by a hurricane that swept through the area. And the boardwalk there had been built because they were leaving the area to naturally regenerate all on its own. So that was really interesting to see, a sort of a young forest, what it used to be when it was growing up. But yeah, the Black Forest High Route was really good, and we saw so many things. You can literally spend all day doing it as well. And there were so many places to stop off. So again, if you're in that area, then definitely worth adding it to your list. And finally, in the Black Forest was Triberg. And a little bit outside of Triberg was, is it the Guinness World Record largest cuckoo clock in the world? And of course, we're going to visit there, aren't we? But we were there at about 5:30ish when we were there. And we were expecting, because it was the world's largest cuckoo clock, we were expecting like fireworks and like confetti and flashing lights and everything. But no, at 5:30, just this little wooden bird thing popped out the top, and it was incredibly underwhelming. But I think maybe on the hour it might get a little bit more exciting, I don't know. But you can go in there as well. You can see the mechanisms there. They're all bespoke made for that particular one. And yeah, definitely worth seeing the world's largest cuckoo clock. And then when we actually made it into Triberg, you can see the high street there in the on the picture on the bottom right. Just such an enchanting little town, and I love all those sort of hand-carved sort of details and cuckoo clocks and all of that sort of thing in the gift shops. It was really nice. We did, of course, try the Black Forest cake as well. That you can see in the top right. It's not anything like you can buy in the supermarket in England. I think in England we called it Black Forest Gatto, which is sort of normally in the frozen section of Sainsbury's. And it's just, it takes it to another level when you're in Germany and you're actually trying it there. Whether or not that's just because we're away or not, I don't know. And after that, we visited the Triberg Falls, which is again a magnificent waterfall. Is it the largest? It's the tallest in Germany, I've just been told. So 164 meters. That sounds like you looked that up. And they had some really good accessible paths all the way up there. And as you can see, Karla with her wheelchair on the little extension they built, so you could get so close to it. We did get quite wet as well because the spray was coming down. You can go all the way up to the top. As I said, Karla's got quite a good power chair, so it was able to go all the way up to the top of the waterfall as well, which was quite exhausting for me, but we made it up there, and then you get the view across the tops of the trees and a little bit of the town as well, which was great. Okay, and we're going to save this for later. This is when we arrived in Belgium. We had a couple of hours window to stop off at a fully accessible hotel. We have included it in the alternate travel section coming up, so that is just a little sneaky peek for now, but that is coming up. Okay, I hope you enjoyed finding out a little bit about our highlights from our recent trip. We're going to talk to you now. How are we doing for time? We're doing all right. I feel like I might get shouted at in a minute for going over, but oh, my best friend Jackie is giving me the thumbs up, so we're okay. So we're going to talk about towing with a wheelchair accessible vehicle. And we get emails all the time from people who want to do sort of similar travel avenues to what we do, and that's great. And we did have one email one time from someone who says that they were under the impression it was completely impossible to tow any sort of caravan or trailer with a wheelchair accessible vehicle. Unfortunately, they had been told that by a wheelchair accessible vehicle manufacturer that did not do the type of conversion that you need to fit a tow bar. I think there is only a few types of WAV that you can fit a tow bar to. You saw the picture of our Peugeot partner at the top of the presentation, and with its lowered floor, that was just completely impossible. You can't fit a tow bar to that sort of adaptation. But with something like we have a Volkswagen Transporter, or maybe the comparable Mercedes, is it V-Class or Vito or something like that? So long as it hasn't got a lowered floor, and they haven't needed to use the tow bar mounts to fit some sort of lift or something, then you should be able to do that. But as I say, definitely worth checking with your wheelchair accessible vehicle manufacturer, unless of course they are the ones that don't do that particular type of adaptation. So this is our wheelchair accessible vehicle. As you can see, we have a hydraulic tail lift fitted to the back of it, and with the tow bar in place, it is not possible for us to use the ramp. I did test that one time when I forgot to take the tow bar off, so our wheelchair lift remains in place all the time, but our tow bar does detach. It's called a detachable tow bar. And with the tow bar removed, it does allow us to use the lift like normal. Have we got another picture of? Yes. So that is how we fit a tow bar to our car. But maybe you're wondering, well, how do we get Karla out of the car when we're towing? And as you can see from the picture, that is how we do it. We carry portable ramps with us all the time. We do actually keep them in the car because it's immensely useful to have the option to use some portable ramps to get Karla out of the side of the car. Say if we've been blocked in by someone parking behind us. I know some of you might be familiar with being in that situation. Also sometimes it's just more convenient to get Karla out onto the pavement as opposed to out the back of the car on the road. But that of course gives us the option to use those portable ramps when we are hitched up and towing. And I believe that picture might have been from the trip I was telling you about to the Outer Hebrides a few years ago, on one of the ferries, the inter-island ferries, I think. Okay, so you heard about our caravan, and I told you that it wasn't quite as substantially adapted as we wanted it to be. So now we're going to tell you about what I think over the years is quite possibly the most adapted caravan we've ever come across. And this, I can't remember what year these caravans were. I think they were 2018, 2019. It's a Bailey Pegasus Grande. It is an 8-foot wide caravan, which I think is pretty much the largest width they can build caravans. So as that might suggest, you do get a lot more internal space. It is quite noticeable as well. Our caravan, I think, is 7'6". So with those extra few inches, it does create a lot more space for you. So let us show you these adaptions. Now, this particular caravan had been adapted for a gentleman who has a condition called cerebral palsy. I think I'm led to believe that cerebral palsy has, it affects lots of people in many different ways. And as I say, this was one of the most heavily adapted caravans we'd ever seen. So from that picture on the left, you can see we have an L-shaped lounge. And you're probably wondering, well, why is those sofas on the right sort of slightly extended out? Well, this caravan had a 12-volt slide-out unit. They're not very common in England. It's sort of like quite a thing in America, but they actually fitted one to this caravan, and it made such a huge amount of space. You can see Karla's chair on that picture in the top right, just to sort of show you the amount of space. I think she had a turning circle at every single point in the caravan. And then towards the back, there was a bed and a corner sort of wet room there as well. So let's just dive a little bit deeper into that caravan, and we'll point out some of the highlights for you in terms of the access features. So similar to our caravan, you get the wider aperture door with the ramps going up to it, and that nice sort of gentle gradual ramp on the inside. You can see just on the picture below that, it has been fitted with a not hydraulic wheelchair. It is an electronic wheelchair lift, and that means that you can get your wheelchair in really easily. Perhaps if it's a manual chair, because maybe it's quite difficult to push a manual chair up those ramps, so you have the wheelchair winch if you need it. Karla's chair did manage right on those ramps. We didn't need to use that to get her in, but it's great to have that. I think there is actually, I'm not very good at this stuff, but I'm pretty sure there is actually some sort of regulation that means if the ramp is short to a certain length, then you have to by law fit. Jackie's nodding, that's giving me reassurance. So I think you actually have to, in quite a lot of circumstances, actually legally fit them, just in order to make it safe. And I think that's very important. It's got to be safe. And as well on campsites as well, campsite pitches aren't necessarily the largest. I think maybe in the UK sort of 9 meters by 9 meters is standard, which I may or may not be making up. I'm sure there's probably people watching this that know much better than me, but I have a feeling, so they're about that. So you don't necessarily always have the enough space to put a really long ramp. And of course, you're traveling, you need to be portable. So that is why winches are fitted. In the top right there, we've got an electronically adjustable profiling bed, which is great. And then on the image below that, you can see a hoist as well. There is a lot more you can do. It's basically bespoke to whatever you can do. I will tell you about the company that adapt these caravans and motorhomes a little bit later, but they can fit, shower beds. They can do anything you want. And so long as it's safe, as long as it's in the the weight limits for that particular vehicle, then they can do anything really. Okay, so moving on to a wheelchair accessible motorhome. You can, when it comes to adaptions, you can do a little bit more to motorhomes than you can with caravans. This is because caravans and towing weights and everything, you do have to be careful that the caravan doesn't get too heavy. With motorhomes, as long as again you are in that weight limits for the chassis and everything, you can be a little bit more flexible. They can up plate caravans and motorhomes as well, if you need it to be. But generally with motorhomes, you do have a little bit more flexibility with the amount of weight that you can use and the adaptions you can fit to them. So this motorhome, similar to the caravan, has a wider aperture door. And what we love about these conversions, and these are done by Coach Built, who are based in Nuneaton, is that they look so original to how they've left the factory. And we quite like that from an accessibility point of view. We don't necessarily want everything to look like it's been adapted. We kind of just want it to blend in and look completely normal. And that's what we like about Coachbuilt and the way they adapt their caravans and motorhomes. So just below the door, you can see you've got a side wheelchair lift. It is a big no-no fitting lifts onto caravans just because of the weight of them. And inside this motorhome, now this was, I can't remember who this was adapted for, but it was absolutely perfect to their needs, as you can imagine. So up front, there was 2 travelling seats right at the front in the cab. I believe there's another 2 travelling seats behind that. Towards the back, you have a lift. This one also had a smaller 12-volt slide-out unit fitted to it. And then the wet room along the corner as well. And we were sat in it for longer than we probably should have been, and we just wish that we could take it off on one of our adventures. But sadly, I think that one was already owned by someone, so we couldn't do that. Okay. So now the time has come to tell you all about some alternatives to caravans and motorhomes. Maybe you want to do sort of accessible travel, but you don't want to do, the avenue of caravan and motorhoming. So this is some of the options that we've found over our years of traveling. As I say, please be invited to let us know your other ways that you travel if I've missed any out. But this is what we're going to touch on this evening. So we're going to start off at the sort of the lower sort of the cheaper ends, and then we're going to sort of work our way up. Tenting or tent camping is the most simplest and basic way of traveling. There's a lot of tents on the market. We see them, as you can see the picture on the bottom right there, was at the February Camping, Caravaning and Motorhome show. They have these camping shows every February and October at the NEC in Birmingham, and it's all about travel and camping and caravans and motorhomes. The February show does have much more emphasis on camping, so if you want to find the best tent, then that's the show to go to. A lot of tents, not all of them, but a lot of them have sort of level access floors, not floors, but there's no sort of threshold to get through the entrance of the tent, so that facilitates sort of easy wheelchair access. And you're sort of wondering, well, if you have a tent and you go camping, then what are you going to do for washroom facilities? And we are pleased to say that a lot of the campsites we visit generally have a pretty good standard of accessible wet room on their campsites. The two camping organisations that we stay with quite a lot are the Caravan and Motorhome Club and the Camping and Caravanning Club. Not all of they own their own sites across England and Scotland and the UK, but quite a lot of their sites, some of them don't have any toilet facilities at all, and others do, and quite often you'll find that they have an accessible wet room done to a really good standard of accessibility. So that is how you can maybe facilitate tent camping, supported with the network of accessible wet rooms on many of the campsites across the UK. And it's always really nice when we come across one that's done really well, because it just means that if you want to, go tenting, then you have that facility to use if you want to. If anyone does want to know any good recommendations for, what campsites maybe we've discovered on our travels that maybe we'd recommend to you in your area, then just drop us an email and we'll hopefully point you in the right direction. But I would say, if you do have a very specific need, then it's always worth giving a campsite a telephone call beforehand, just to double check what their facilities are and if they're going to be suitable for your needs. Okay, next up, the next step up from tent camping is called trailer tenting, which, as you can see from the picture, is a trailer that you tow behind your car, and then out pops a tent. And what's interesting about these is some of them, I think, sort of fold out on frames, so that some of them are quite easy to set up. And you can see from the ones in these pictures here that they are level access. We've got a picture of Karla and in one of them there to show you that you can't actually get in. Sometimes they come with power in them as well, so you can have a maybe similar to a tent actually, where you can have like an extension cable and you can plug in your equipment if you need to. Some of them also have sort of fold out kitchen units, which I think is really cool. And these are quite cheap as well. I mean, maybe not some of these brand new ones at the show, but you can pick these up off like eBay for very, very little money, maybe £1,000 or £2,000, and then you can go off and you can have a really good trip. Again, similar to tent camping, supported by that network of accessible wet rooms on campsites. Okay, so next up is glamping. And Karla and I are very lucky. We do some work with a company in England. They're based in South Devon and they're called Omnipods and Cabins. And they design and manufacture these off-the-shelf wheelchair accessible glamping units that are situated on some campsites across the UK, and hopefully there's going to be many more in the future as well, because we've stayed in a couple of them and they're just brilliant. You have absolutely everything you need. They were designed by a gentleman called Paddy Costello, and he's a paraplegic, I believe, himself, and so he sort of gets what people need when they go and they need accessible accommodation. And we just love these Omnipod units. So as you can see from the pictures, you get level access, you get a really nice covered decking area, which we really like. Just being able to sort of sit outside under cover in an evening and enjoy being in the shelter. That is great. And then you have, they seem to all have at least 1 or 2 1.5 meter turning circles throughout them, including a 1.5 turning circle in the wet room as well. And one of the things we really love about them is they are so well built. They give a real good feeling of luxury, and whereas, you know, it's quite common to come across sort of fairly beige sort of fittings when it comes to you know, handrails and everything like that. All of theirs are a little bit more expensive, but they get them from a company called Motion Spot, and they design really nice looking you know, handrails and everything, and it's been so well thought out as well. So yeah, if you we have included a link to the Omnipods and Cabins website in the links that Kath might send out after this presentation. So if you go on their website, there is a locations page, and I think there's a map on there as well where you can see some of the sites for the around the UK. They're not operated by Omnipods, they're sort of privately run, you know, campsites, but so you don't book with Omnipod, you book through the campsite that owns the unit, if you know what I mean. Okay, so whilst on all our travels across Europe over the years, it seems to be really common that in France particularly, there are so many campsites that have either 1 or 2 wheelchair accessible camping units to go and stay in. So you can see some of them here. Utopia La Plage Blanche, which was I think it was in the northern Jura region that we discovered on our trip recently. Camping La Fiolen, can't remember where that was, but we were there a few weeks ago, and it was great to see an accessible ramp going up to one of the caravans as well. Camping Les Salus, and that is based in the Loire Valley. It is actually at the Caravan, the Motorhome Club, and Alan Rogers Travel Awards back in February. They won the award for accessibility. They're doing some really good things at their campsite for accessibility, including these level access accessible units as well. They had even had a, you know, special sort of lift to sort of lower you into the swimming pool, and it was very much at the forefront of their minds when it came to running their campsite, which is really refreshing. Monsieur Laurent and his wife Isabel are 2 of the nicest people as well, so that's definitely a site to consider. And then La Orangerie de Beauregard, that is also in the Loire area from our trip last year. And again, although they didn't have an accessible camping unit or glamping unit, they did have, I think the French word for cottage is gîte. So in France, you might go and stay in a gîte, which is a nice little cottage. And they had one which was made specifically for people who have disabilities. The reason why I'm showing you the picture of the pool was because it was like the nicest picture I could find at the campsite. But also it was to remind me that, and we've just never seen this anywhere else in the world, but you might be able to see from the picture of the pool, but there is a ramp going all the way into the pool. They also had a chair that you could use to get you into the pool as well. So Karla tried using her electric wheelchair, so I had to hold her back. But yeah, it was just so incredible to find a swimming pool with a ramp like that. And if you've ever found anywhere like that, again, yeah, please let us know in the comments, because yeah, we'd like to go there. No, not with your electric wheelchair. Okay, so now the piece de la resistance, Hotel Domaine Polderwind. If anyone was at the 2023 NAIDEX show earlier this year, I think it was in March, then like us, you might have met the team who run this place. And it is, I know fully accessible is a very, very strong phrase to use, but we could not think that there would be anyone that wouldn't be able to go here. They'd thought about everything and more. They have about 46 rooms in total, all of which have varying levels of accessibility. It's, I think, can you see, hopefully you can see from that map sort of roughly where it's based, the sort of the red pin there. It is about an hour and a half from Calais. So if you get the incredibly accessible Eurotunnel combined with a very short drive, then that's how you get there. You can also get the Eurostar, which is the passenger train that goes from, I think it goes to London and I think it goes to Brussels. You can then get a connecting train to somewhere, I think it's a little bit closer to the hotel, and they have their own fleet of wheelchair accessible vehicles as well. So they can come and pick you up. So let's show you the rooms. And here we go. So in the top left there, you can see Karla going from the car park to the entrance of the hotel. There is a slightly closer entrance if you want to drop off your bags. And then if anyone's familiar with the Apple headquarters, I think they're in California, how the building is just one loop. It's like a little bit of a smaller version of that. As I say, all of the rooms have varying levels of accessibility. Some of them have hoists, some of them have hoists that go into the washrooms. And everything is sort of as you would expect. And we were just, I just can't sum it up into words. It was just so unique and left us completely speechless. We just didn't know how to sum it up into words, because it's like nothing we'd ever found before. And it was so refreshing to see that this sort of place does exist. And it sort of makes you think, well, why can't everywhere be like that? And it wasn't more expensive either because of its adaptions. It was about what you'd spend on a normal hotel room per night. I can't remember exactly how much, but it was, yeah, just great to see. And they'd thought of everything. So as you can see, some of the wet rooms there, some of the rooms, Karla likes this one that looked across the lake that they had there as well. So as I say, they have their own fleet of wheelchair accessible vehicles that I think they can either take you out take you into town if you want to, or pick you up from the train stations. They had the restaurant and the bar. They had an accessible play area, which is the only time I've ever seen a play area that actually had a ramp going up to the equipment. They also had some sort of special facilities if you'd like a bath, although not every room has a bath. They did have that available, which you could use if you want to. Again, all with hoists, all with sort of Sarah trays if you need that. and everything was just incredible. They even had a spa and a sauna area as well. Again, all with hoists in, and just, yeah, I can't sum it up into words, but if you're interested, definitely worth checking them out on their website. If you have any inquiries for them, then they're really good at speaking English. I don't think I knew a word of whatever language they speak, Dutch, despite the fact I tried. But they speak really good English, and it's just an amazing place to go. Okay, so we are running out of time. I'm very sorry, Kath. We'll carry on. We want to tell you about our favorite travel accessories. This isn't every accessory, it's just some of our favorite ones. So top left there, we have our portable shower. And this is brilliant. It has so many uses, from washing Karla's hair. As I say, we don't have our caravan as adapted as we'd like it to be. So we can use our portable shower with the hair washing basin, which you can see in the top right there, Karla using it. And I think we got the hair washing basin off Amazon actually, and it's a really good, they do make inflatable ones, but we managed to find one that was solid. Our portable shower also gets used for cleaning wheelchair wheels and even the caravan sometimes. It's brilliant. The Bip and Go, the toll tag, our Liberty tag, that is a really good idea if you're traveling in France. I think they do make them for Spain as well. I think there's a different toll network in Spain, but the toll tag is brilliant because whereas, so in our instance, when we're abroad, we have a right-hand drive car, so everything's on the other side of the road. So it's quite common to go into car parks and the ticket for the barrier being on the other side. And Karla, obviously, as a up-front wheelchair passenger, can't necessarily reach out and grab the ticket. I'm getting really good at leaning across and reaching out of the window, and just about without crushing Karla. But on the French toll motorway network, there's still toll tag. You drive up to the barrier, and where you'd ordinarily need to get a ticket and pay with a bank card or cash maybe, this just beeps, and then the barrier opens, and then you get billed. I think it's per month that you're away. So that is how that works. I think it costs about €10 a year or something like that, just to keep it activated, and I think you have to pay a deposit for the actual tag itself, but it is well worth going for if you're doing any sort of trip in France. So this is a favorite one of ours. A lot of disabled people, you might have this problem yourselves, but in the winter, Karla gets really cold hands, and when her hands get cold, she really struggles to drive her chair. So we found this little gadget on the internet. It's a USB rechargeable hand warmer. There is a write-up about this on our Adventurers website in the kit section. So you might be able to find a link there if it still works, to Amazon, where we got this from. And it's brilliant. It lasts for ages. It gets really hot. We hardly ever have it on the highest setting. And it warms your hands up really nicely. It is a brilliant thing to have. Next up, I don't ever call this a Leatherman Wave Plus. I call it my tool of many things, because it is my tool of many things. They're a little bit expensive, but they're such good quality, and they'll really look after you if you need them. It has replaced my caravan toolbox, so I no longer have that, and I have this instead. It's basically a multi-tool that has many things, as my name for it might suggest. It has a knife, it has a file, it has a saw. We've got the accessory pack for it, which comes with loads of screwdriver bits and Allen key bits, and the ratchet screwdriver bit that you can see in the middle. It folds out and it has pliers. And it is, I always say that it saves our lives, but it doesn't literally save our lives, but it is so useful to have. It's helped us on our trips, unscrewing the rear panel from Karla's chair if we need to get to that. It's fixed our caravan bumper when I might have accidentally had an incident arriving on a campsite in Germany. I do believe we might even have a trailer trainer in the audience tonight, so I'm very sorry about that. I did sort of momentarily forget the concept of trailer swing, but nevertheless, that tool was brilliant for fixing that. And then finally, in the bottom right is a motor mover, and these are for caravans. And it is basically, you get, if you choose this accessory, you get one that comes in front of both your caravan wheels, or maybe 4 if you have a twin axle caravan. And it is like a remote control caravan. You engage the rollers onto the tire. You get a little remote about the same size as my phone, and you can move your caravan around. And if Jackie's looking very surprised. If you're not able to, our caravan, for example, weighs about a ton and a half, and if you're not able to manhandle it yourself, whether that's because, or maybe you arrive on a campsite and the campsite is so tight in France, then you might use your motor mover to maneuver your caravan onto the pitch. And they are brilliant. They also facilitated us being headfirst on that amazing campsite on the west coast of the Isle of Lewis. So yeah, I wouldn't say that they're an essential accessory, but it is definitely worth it if that's something that you want. Okay, so I hope you like the travel accessory. There are many more, but that was just some of the highlights that we use. Okay, we'll give you a few tips that we've discovered on our travels. So tip number 1 is plan. So from everything from where you're going to stay to what you're going to do when you get there, to maybe pre-phoning up some of the attractions that you want to visit to find out about their accessibility information. Having a plan is a really good idea. You are probably better than us in every single possible imaginable way, and you might be able to cope without having a plan, but we prefer having a plan and knowing what we're going to do. And we have tried not having a plan. As I said earlier, our trip to the Outer Hebrides, none of that was booked other than the ferry and the first 2 nights on the campsite. Everything else was completely we went with the flow and see where we ended up, and that was great. But that trip ended up being about 5 weeks long, and by the end of it, it became we personally found it quite fatiguing. There were a few instances where we were driving somewhere and we had absolutely no idea where we were going to stay that night. So I would say have a plan, and then you have to worry less about where you're going to sleep. But I suppose it's the beauty of having a caravan or motorhome. You can sort of you sleep with what you're towing behind you or traveling in. So yeah, as I say, you maybe would prefer not to have a plan, but we prefer having a plan. Secondly, time. We're running out of time, but time we have found on our trips to allow extra time. I think that might be specific to us, and because we're traveling with a disability, we generally find that allowing an extra day or 2 just to give ourselves time to relax and breathe in between all the excursions we like to do is a really good idea. It helps you not get too burnt out, and just allows you to enjoy your time and relax a bit more, because of course that's what you want to do when you're away. Enjoy your time and relax. Contingency. We have a few predetermined contingency plans. This means that if we're ever in a situation where we have some sort of incident, we sort of know what we're going to do before it's happened. So we've been in the Highlands of Scotland, and Karla's ended up using her rescue meds, and our predetermined plan for that is that if we start using her rescue meds, we very much return to base and reset ourselves and carry on. So it could be anything from, if you have a breakdown, make sure you've got really good insurance, or anything really. Just have a plan if things go wrong. Things aren't always as wonderful as you see them on Instagram. Things can go wrong, and it's good to have a plan or a backup just in case. Take extra supplies. I hope I'm not just speaking for myself, but I'm sure we all do the thing where we take an extra pair of pants when we go away. Is that just a thing? I don't know. It's something that we do, and similar to taking an extra pair of pants when you go away, take extra supplies. Especially if you're traveling with a disability, things might happen and you might need to stay somewhere for longer, or you might break down, you need to get your car fixed before you can travel back. Karla uses food for special medical purposes. She's tube fed overnight, so we generally take a few extra feeds for her, and that means that we just have a little bit of safety net just in case anything goes wrong, and we know that we haven't got to get home immediately if something doesn't go to plan. Okay, and resources. As I said at the beginning, you know, we can point you in the right direction, but and I know what I need to know in order to tow our caravan safely, but I'm not, you know, very good as a sort of general knowledge thing. So these are some resources that you can go to if you want a little bit of extra, a little bit of help with everything. Of course, there's us. Well, yes, of course, Karla's just reminding me, you will get links for all of these as well, which will be emailed out to you at the end of the presentation. So there is us. If you want to ask us any questions, if you want us to point in the right direction, if there's anything we can do to help you at any time, just email us. We're hello@adventurewheels.co.uk. We're on the internet. We have a website, adventurewheels.co.uk, or you can message us through social media. We're always happy to talk to you and help out as best we can. There's also the two organisations we were talking about, the Camping and Caravanning Club and the Caravan and Motorhome Club. They obviously have those accessible wet rooms on their campsites, and also they have sections on the website which are dedicated to accessible caravanning and stuff like that. There is a really good book. It's written by our friend and fellow Caravan Writers Guild journalist, Sammy Fairclough. It is pretty much everything you need to know about caravanning in one brilliant book. I mean, there's stuff in here that I didn't even know we needed to know. So if you're thinking about getting a caravan or motorhome yourself, and this one's specifically for caravanning, but if you're thinking about getting a caravan yourself, this just has everything you could quite possibly ever wish to know about it. And then another brilliant book is the Take the Slow Road series. This is written by another caravan writer, colleague of ours, Martin Dorey. And these are like some of the best travel books we've ever come across. My only criticism is that he's not done them for everywhere yet. Where you might get the rough guides, or what's the other one? I can't remember, but similar to rough guides where you have this almost like a directory of everything. This is very sort of, this is set routes. So I think there's maybe 20-ish routes. This one's the France one, and it will show you the routes that they took on their trip, and it will give you some of the highlights and some of the things to do, as well as a ton of information for that country as well. So I believe there's also a Spain and Portugal one. I'm very disappointed there wasn't a Germany one before we went to that, but yeah, the Take the Slow Road series by Martin Dorey is a great source of inspiration. And finally, Coach Built. Now, Coach Built in the UK are the go-to people for caravan and motorhome adaptions. They are the people who did the adaptions that we've shown earlier up in this webinar. And there is no one better. I don't think there's anyone better on the planet to talk to about this. Karla and I certainly can't recommend anyone else. So yeah, give Coach Built a call or visit their website if you're interested in what can be done. And other than that, I'm very sorry we went over by quite a long time. That wasn't planned, but I can talk about caravanning and motorhoming for forever, really. Yeah, as I say, if you have any questions, please feel free to ask them. If we haven't got time, then please feel free to email us, and definitely check out the Pathfinders website as well. What I will say is, just to wrap up, when it comes to accessible travel, there is no right or wrong. It's whatever suits you best. Similarly, there's, whether it's in a caravan, a motorhome, a tent, a trailer tent, a glamping unit, or a campsite in France or whatever. It's the most important thing is getting out there, making a gazillion memories, seeing some incredible places, taking lots of pictures, sending us a postcard, and just having the best time. Don't wait, for 10 years in the future where you can maybe afford a caravan or motorhome. Just start now with whatever you can, because it will enrich your life more than you realise. So that's that. I'm going to hand back to Kath and hopefully not get told off for going over time. Yeah, we're happy to answer any questions anyone has. Also, we would really like to know, particularly if you're a regular Pathfinders event attendee, we'd love to know about how you travel, some of the places you've gone to, any of your accessible recommendations as well. We'd love to hear everything.
While we're waiting for people to type their questions, I'd really love to know. I saw on your trip through, you passed through Luxembourg. I've been before and it was one of my most favourite places to visit. It was an amazing campsite there with a brilliant but accessible bathroom. And I just wondered, did you stop or did you just drive through?
I don't even think we went through Luxembourg. I put that screenshot I showed you on the presentation. I don't think that was exactly the route we took. We took a different route. I think we went slightly further north. We brushed through the Netherlands as we were going through to Belgium. So I'm very sorry that wasn't quite accurate on the presentation. I actually, to be fair, we could have driven through Luxembourg and I probably wouldn't have realised. But it's great to hear that you give Luxembourg a thumbs up for accessibility.
I recommend that next time. Definitely.
Yes. Okay.
So we've got some questions coming in now. So Karla, I know you've recently switched to air tyres. Which is best, solid or air, and what difference has it made?
Actually a question I think we know the answer to. So Karla and I are working to produce some content in association with BoulderTech, who are the manufacturers of Karla's power chair, and they always get asked from their customers, you know, what's better, air tyres or solid tyres? And Karla has been running air tyre on her wheelchair for the past few months, including our trip around Europe as well. What we discovered was that there is a difference, there is a noticeable difference, but it is not as huge a difference as I think we were hoping for. Even when Karla's air tyres were blown up to their maximum PSI, they were softer than solid tyres. But then, of course, if you go for the air tyres, you then have that that lingering thing over you. You know, what if you get a puncture, and what if you're not able to fix it? And we'd always say, you know, have a backup plan, either have a spare inner tube, or what we've done for Karla is fit something called slime, which is a capital nodding. That's good. It's a sort of a puncture repair solution that you put in the tyre, and if you run over like a nail or something, it's supposed to self-seal and self-heal that tyre, and should hopefully get you home. So that's what we're running, but we haven't actually had a puncture, so we haven't able to. It is just personal preference. So yeah, that's a good question. Thank you for asking. And yeah, different, better, but not as better as we were sort of hoping. It's not as smooth as butter, which I don't think you can ever get in a power chair, really, is it?
I would add that if you get a puncture with green slime, it is brilliant. It does get you home, but then you need to deal with it. If you leave it overnight, in the morning it'll be flat.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So that's helpful to know. Thank you. We will, at some point in the future, we will write up that content for you in association with BoulderTech. And if you follow us on social media, then you will know when that comes out.
Brilliant. So the next person's asked, do you know of any campsites that have a hoist?
Silence whilst we think. I can't
go on to the next one and come back.
No, I can't think that we have ever come across a campsite other than some of the accessible units on campsites. They seem to be very, very, very few and far between. That's right. Yes. So the gîtes we were telling you about in the Loire Valley at Camping Le Orangerie de Beauregard, that did have a portable hoist in there. And of course, the whole of Hotel Domain Polar Wind was kitted up for that sort of stuff. So campsite specifically, I'm very sorry, I can't think of anything off the top of my head. If you email us in a couple of days, maybe we would have thought of something. But other than recommending you take your own portable hoist for using in the accessible wet rooms or campsites, I can't think of anything. I'm very sorry.
So somebody else has said that it's a brilliant presentation and thank you. And again, I hit the continent, but this sort of thing is really I haven't hit the continent yet, but this sort of thing is really confidence inspiring. They're going to send some pics when they do. I think they know you already.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you very much for your nice comment.
Also, yes, the recording will become available to people who registered but weren't able to attend. It will go onto our YouTube channel. I can't guarantee it will be done in the next week or so, but we'll try to get it there as soon as we can. Next question is, how does Karla find getting health insurance?
I just found how to get the Q&A session up. There it is. There's everyone's questions. From Dr. Suzanne herself. Hello, Suzanne. Hopefully we'll make it across the island one day. How does Karla find getting health insurance? When we book our foreign travel trips, we normally book through the Caravan and Motorhome Club. They have their own set of affiliate campsites in Europe, and also alongside alongside that booking service for those sites, they also do something that they call their red pennant service, and that includes breakdown service, recovery for being in mainland Europe, and also it does include health insurance as well. You do have to be a Caravan and Motorhome Club member in order to be able to get that insurance, but and you can also use it for other trips outside that, but you do have to be a Caravan and Motorhome Club member. So for us, we haven't got normal travel insurance as someone might use if they had a disability and they were going on a flying holiday to Portugal or something. So the best answer I can give is that when we travel, we use the red pennant service from the Caravan and Motorhome Club, and it doesn't make it very much more expensive. Well, I think so long as Karla's not started like new medicine in the past 3 months or something, or so long as you haven't got such and such condition, but it's very specific, then you know it doesn't cost you any extra. It's like a flat rate. So yeah, it's quite a good service, but as I say, it's quite specific for caravanning and motorhoming. Maybe in the future, if we have flying across to Ireland and bothering you, then we might find out what other people use for insurance then. But I'm sorry, that's the best answer I can give at the moment. Is our experience of what we've used.
I'm going to skip out a few questions. I might come back, but seeing as we're short of time now, Lizzie said that she went to Holland and Amsterdam with limitless travel. And there was an awesome hotel there, which she sent the link to in the Q&A. We'll stick that into the email that we send out. And they travelled by accessible coach. She also went on an accessible canal boat too. But I'm going to go back, and this is going to be the final question, I'm afraid. Oh, we've got lots of them. I'm sorry, we're going to have to. I think we're just going to have one final question. This was, what is the best location you've travelled accessibility-wise, and why?
Accessibility wise, that's a tricky one to answer, because normally the way we travel, we have it's very much the beauty of caravanning and motorhoming is the fact that you very much only need a campsite pitch in order to have you know, and then everything is accessible as you've already made it, because you have your accessibility adaptions already with you. I think, you know, obviously Hotel de Main Polderwind in Belgium would be the most accessible place we've ever visited. But generally speaking, in England, we've not done that much outside of caravanning and motorhoming. And I wouldn't want to point you in the direction of that hotel we stopped at in Manchester, which I hope doesn't even exist anymore. Can you think of anything? Yeah, we generally seem to find accessible things to do everywhere. There are some things that, you know, we can't do just because they're like a geographical thing, like a cave or something like that. But yeah, we generally find a lot of accessible places wherever we visit. In terms of a specific accessible sort of place to stay, I'm very sorry, I can't think of much actually, to be honest. I
know I said that was going to be my last question, but there's one more that I think is quite important. Sorry.
Sure, we've got all the time in the world for you, Gav.
Have you? This is from Lizzie. Have you ever had any crises with ventilators on holiday?
No, asking from experiences of seeking support at 11 p.m. Thankfully, no. Karla's got quite a good respiratory service, Southampton Hospital in Southampton, and they have allowed Karla to have 2 ventilators. So I don't know how common that is, but in our instance, it means that if we're a gazillion miles from home and something goes wrong with Karla's ventilator, maybe somebody drops it by accident, then we have that second one to use if we need to. Most of the time when we travel, actually, we do have a general rule that we don't have them located in the same place at the same time. So we might keep one in the caravan and one in the car. I generally get very twitchy if they're both in the same location, just in case they're both in the car and we come back from somewhere and the car's not there anymore or something like that. But no, you have my sympathies for having a problem with your ventilator. But the way we get over having a problem is by having a backup and a spare. So if your respiratory service is able to do that, particularly if you travel, then it's definitely worth asking them.
I have a spare too when I travel, and I'm based in.
Yes, Karla's just saying we do take disposables as well. So if something like happens to if her ventilator tube ruptures or something, we do have those disposable parts if we need them. So yeah, pack spares, and hopefully they'll let you take another if you're able to.
I was going to say that I also in the northeast, and I have a spare ventilator that I take with me, and I would recommend putting spares of everything in.
Yes.
Yeah. Anything you can't survive with overnight, or for more than 24 hours, then take spares. Yes,
good idea. Yeah, good plan.
So I think that we're going to end the talk there. Thank you so much, Stephen and Karla. Don't worry about the fact that it went over. I think that we've all really enjoyed hearing about your travels, and we could probably listen for another hour, couldn't we, Jackie?